All right, so I'm creating this video to share an important announcement with you. I've decided I'm going to retire from the game of real estate. Now, why am I retiring from the game of real estate, and how does this benefit you? The reason why I'm retiring is for two reasons. The first reason, I've decided to start a new business that I want to give all of my time and attention to. And I think this new business is going to benefit people a lot more than simply purchasing a house will. Now, the new business that I'm starting is going to be known as Leviticus Enterprises, and the overall intent of Leviticus Enterprises is to help people achieve eudaimonia. What eudaimonia is the better life. What is the better life? The better life is building up what I call three pillars. The three pillars are health, wealth, and relationships. And by building up all three of those pillars, you will achieve eudaimonia, which is known as the better life or the more fulfilled life. So that's the main reason why I'm leaving the game of real estate. I like to think that by helping people accomplish those three things, there's more value I can give to people over simply helping them buy or sell or invest in real estate. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still helping people with real estate. I'm still going to help you if you have any questions. I'm still going to help you with finance-related questions. But as far as actively listing properties, as far as actively showing properties, I no longer do that. I'm retiring from that aspect of real estate. Now, there's a secondary component to why I'm retiring. And the secondary component is what I want to share with you that I think you'll find a lot more beneficial. So, what is that? The second reason I'm retiring is because I think as a business model, being a real estate agent isn't the greatest model out there, especially in 2022 and 2023. And I'm going to share with you a few reasons why I think that is and how you can benefit from that and what you can do in response to that to succeed if you are planning on starting a business or if you've been thinking about starting a business. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 reasons why I think real estate as an agent isn't the best model that one can start, especially if they're an absolute beginner. Now, for reference, I first got into real estate not to become a successful agent. I actually got into real estate because I wanted to be an investor. Back when I was in college, I kind of went through a bout of depression. Back at that time, life wasn't going quite well for me. I didn't have a girlfriend. I was super broke to the point where I was basically on the verge of being evicted. I was actually at some point about to get sued by a few of my friends that lived with me because I just couldn't afford to pay rent. And we were being threatened by our landlord. And at the time, I also wasn't very healthy. I was eating crap food. I remember I was so broke, I would sit there and I would memorize the prices of McDonald's and Taco Bell because that's basically all I could afford at the time was basically stuff off the dollar menu and the cheapest items at Taco Bell. Sort of hoping to change my circumstances, I would go to the library often. And in the library, I learned an interesting fact. And the fact was that a lot of millionaires were created with real estate. Now, at the time, I had no idea exactly what real estate was. I knew it was houses, but I didn't really understand exactly how to buy a house. I didn't understand how houses made money. If you asked me at the time about things like equity, loans, mortgages, I had no idea what any of that was. So my thought process was, well, if I get my license, if I become a real estate agent, I could learn more about becoming an investor in the long run. I'll learn more about the trade secrets. I'll understand more about how to buy a house, how to sell a house, how to list a house, how to rent out a house, how to make money with property, how to make money with real estate, how land works, how all of that works. And to a degree, I was successful in what my pursuit was. I became an agent and learned a ton about real estate. And I'm going to share some of those things with you in different videos. But when it comes to actually being an agent as a profession, it was never truly my goal to be the best real estate agent. Of course, I wanted to be good at it. Of course, I'm competitive. Of course, I wanted to be better than average. But it was never the goal to be a Ryan Serhant or one of those top level brokers or top level real estate agents in the county. So for that reason, I decided to retire. And I realized that there's a few things about the real estate agent business model that will certainly hinder a lot of people, especially if you're a budding entrepreneur, especially if you want to start your own business, and especially if you think being a real estate agent is the best route to go. As an agent, I get a lot of calls from people. I get a lot of inquiries. People ask me, what exactly should I do to become an agent? What do you recommend? How many classes do I have to take? How much do I have to work? How much do I get paid? These are all questions that come up, and I'll probably address them in a future series of videos. But in this video, I did want to share with you 5 reasons why I don't think being a real estate agent is a good business model, especially if you're a beginning entrepreneur. Now, reason number one, I don't think being a real estate agent is a good business model. It requires a lot of capital up front. Over the past decade or so, between doing real estate, between trying other businesses, between doing drop shipping, I started my own clothing brand at one point. I started my own advertising agency. I've done a bunch of different things. And during that time, one thing I've learned is that the less capital you can spend up front to get money, the better your business will be overall. And the issue with being a real estate agent is that by default, it requires capital. Now, why does it require capital? For one, you need to pay to get a license. And while that's not terribly bad, as you become an agent, you're going to quickly realize that you need to have a license. You need to drive around a lot, which means you need a car, which means you need to spend money on gas. You need to market yourself. Now, marketing can be done for free. You can use different mediums like social media, but real estate is an insanely competitive industry, which means that you're probably going to at some point decide to step it up. You might need to invest in Facebook ads. You probably need to invest in open house signs. You probably need to invest in just food, snacks, whatever. And while these things all sound very small, these things do start to add up over time. Now, real quick, I do want to kind of get into the different expenses you will probably have as a real estate agent. And I want to get into the exact amounts that you're going to probably spend. Now, before I get into this, I do want to let you know that these prices are what I'm actually lowballing a little bit, but this is about what I paid as an agent. I'm going to do the yearly amount because I think that matters a lot more, but I'll explain along the way that some things are monthly, some things are quarterly, and some things are just yearly. So I'm going to explain that as we go on, but I do want to give you a general overview of how much you should anticipate spending. And like I said, it depends on place to place. It depends on the different state that you're in. So check with your individual state if you're thinking about being an agent. But let's get into it. So one thing you're going to definitely spend money on is the MLS. Now, what does MLS stand for? The MLS is the multiple listing services. And basically, if you're a real estate agent, it's the tool that you use to see which houses are on the market, coming to the market, off market. It's very similar to Zillow. If you've ever used Zillow or Realtor.com or Trulia or Redfin, any of those websites, it's more or less the same concept, except as a real estate agent, you get a lot more information and you get a lot more insights into these different properties. And usually you get to see what's going to hit the market or what's active on the market quicker than Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, Realtor.com, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a tool that all real estate agents must use. And what a lot of people don't understand when they get into the business is that it's not a free tool. You must pay for this tool. Now, I paid, I believe it was quarterly for this tool, for the MLS. And I'm not going to do the quarterly cost, but I will do the yearly cost. And the yearly cost is about $480 per year. Now, again, that doesn't sound like a lot, but consider this. If you're a brand new agent, if you don't have a lot of money, if you don't have a lot saved up, if you don't have a lot of capital to spend, spending about $120 per quarter can be quite costly. Because remember, you're going to need to spend money on things like rent, most likely, car maintenance, gas, food, just all the basic expenses. And this is just one expense. Now, I'm going to get into more as time goes on throughout the video, but I do want to sort of give you an idea of what you can anticipate spending. Now, the second thing you're probably going to have to spend money on is a Sentry lock. In order to get into any house, you need to sort of either have the app or you need to have a key card that allows you to open the lock boxes on different properties. You might not have seen them if you're not a real estate agent or if you're not in the real estate industry, but next time you're driving around, if you see an open house sign or something like that, or a house that's for sale, you'll probably notice a lockbox either on the doorknob or on the side of the house. Basically, as an agent, you need to have certain access to get into those lockboxes to retrieve the key to get into the house. And so this is not a free service. It's a subscription service that you need to pay for. I believe, like I said, I'm lowballing, but expect to pay about $100 every quarter for that. So let's just say $400 per year to use the Sentry Lock application. Now, this does not include, by the way, if you're a listing agent, and for those of you that aren't familiar with a listing agent versus a buyer's agent, really quick, a listing agent helps you sell your house. A buyer's agent helps you buy your house. Pretty straightforward, right? But a listing agent, you need to purchase your lockbox, you need to purchase your sign, and all of those things begin to add up too. Depending on the different type of box you use, you might end up spending anywhere from, say, $20 to $80, maybe $100, depends on the quality of the lockbox. You need to pay for your own sign. A sign could cost about $100. That doesn't include installation. You can choose to install it yourself, which is labor, which is time out of your day. Or you can hire someone to do it. That could cost about $80 to $100, maybe more. Depends on the company you use. So all these prices vary. The next thing you're probably gonna have to pay for is classes. Now, when you become a real estate agent, you need to take a lot of classes, one, to get your license, but you also need to take classes to keep your license. Now, there's some different websites out there that will allow you to get your continuing education for free, but sometimes you want to actually learn more about the industry. You should be trying to learn more. And if you want to take classes that aren't basic, that aren't just super simplistic or super straightforward, that actually give you different aspects of the real estate industry, of the real estate game, you're probably going to have to pay some money. Now, usually these classes aren't super expensive. On the cheaper end, I've seen classes that are about $10. On the higher end, I've seen usually about $30 or $40. It kind of just depends. Some websites out there will give you a bundle of courses that could be anywhere from $60 to $80. But on average, let's just say you'll spend about $50 probably on courses. I would say throughout the year, you'd probably expect to spend about $100, maybe $200 max on courses. So we're going to factor that in as well. The next thing is your licensing dues. Now, this varies heavily from brokerage to brokerage, but many different brokerages that you go to will usually require you to pay a fee per month to use the office. Now, the good thing, in my opinion, is that I think most of these fees are actually pretty fair. Typically, this goes into things like maintenance for the entire office, paper, copywriter, just anything you'll use within the office space in general, a desk. I actually think it's quite a fair price. At the office I went to, it was about $40 per month, which I think is a super fair price, but nonetheless, it is a recurring fee that you need to keep track of and take into consideration every single month. So throughout the entire year at $40 a month, I would say depending on which office you belong to and how they decide to factor in their fees, expect to pay about, let's just say $400 per year. Now, as you can see, these are all starting to add up. Again, it doesn't seem like a lot. You might be thinking, okay, well, it's only like $1,000 or a few thousand at this point. But we're not done yet. There's a lot more to take into consideration. Typically in real estate, there tends to be what's called errors and omissions. And errors and omissions is sort of insurance in a way. If something goes extremely wrong, you're usually paying into this errors and omission. And in a situation in which something that does go terribly wrong, the money you're putting into that is usually deducted. Now, personally, I haven't seen anyone get into such a situation where they needed to use this money. So to some degree, it's really like insurance. You're kind of just paying money in hopes that nothing goes wrong. And if something does go wrong, the money goes to that. But it is still a fee nonetheless. Now, again, these fees all vary depending on your brokerage, depending on your state. So look into these things before you actually get your real estate license. I believe that per year, I want to say it's per year, I paid about $400 in errors and omission. Again, these things begin to add up. So you really need to take this into consideration when you're beginning as an agent. And then finally, one of the main things that I think will cost a lot of money is the marketing. Now, as an agent, I think the expectation that a lot of people have getting into it is that they'll be an agent, they'll sit at a desk, people will call, and that they will get business. This is not the case at all. Being a real estate agent is a business. It is entrepreneurship. You need to go out, you need to find clients, you need to get the clients, and you need to close the clients. It's a whole sales process, which I'm going to get into in just a little bit. But in order to get the attention of a potential client, you need to market yourself. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can market yourself for free using things like social media. However, once you try to get a bit more competitive, you're probably going to start dipping into the area of Facebook ads. You might try to hire other people to help you market. You might need to pass out door hangers, which isn't too expensive, but it is very time consuming. You might want to put up open house flyers. You might want to pass things out to people. You need business cards. As you start to add up all of the different marketing expenses, it really begins to take a toll into your bank account, into your wallet, especially if you're a brand new agent. Now, if you're a seasoned agent who has money coming in consistently, these things might not seem like a lot, and these things might seem like a small piece to get a lot of money, which it very well can be. But I'm making this video for people just getting into the business. And chances are, if you're just getting into it, especially if you're young, and especially if you don't have any savings lined up, it can be very costly. So I do want to help you keep that in mind. And the final thing that I think is the most costly when it comes to starting out as a real estate agent is opportunity cost. And the reason why I say opportunity cost is because a lot of times when you get in as an agent, it's very difficult to, one, get a client, two, keep a client, and three, close a client. Like I said, I'm going to get more into it as we get deeper into the video, but a lot can go wrong in a real estate transaction. There's a lot of different parties involved. And in my personal opinion, after looking at different businesses and different business models, there's a lot of different businesses you can do, which can help you make more money in a shorter period of time with a lot less effort than real estate. So this is one of the main reasons why I don't think real estate is a great career path, especially if you're trying to pursue entrepreneurship, and especially if you're not familiar with entrepreneurship, or if you're just getting started, or if you don't have a lot of capital. Now, the second reason why I think real estate is not a great business for people to just get into as a beginner, it's very difficult to scale, in my opinion. Personally, I like to think about business as a very long-term endeavor. And when it comes down to it, I think any long-term endeavor, you need to consider the possibility of ultimately scaling. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with scaling, to scale a business means that the amount of time you put in doesn't line up in equal proportion to the amount of money or to the amount of revenue or profit that you can get from it. So let me use this example. In a standard job, in a standard 9 to 5, you're getting paid for the amount of time that you work. The issue with that is that you can't work more than 24 hours in a single day. You can't work physically 24 hours in a day, but your job also won't pay you over a certain amount of hours per day, which means that your income is always linked to the amount of time that you have and the amount of time that you're able to work. Now, in business, one of the great things about business, one of the great things about entrepreneurship is that ultimately you can scale in a business. Ultimately, you can de-link your time from your money so that way you can make more money over time, but not put in as much time to make that money. Does that make sense at all? So the issue with real estate down the line is I think it's difficult to scale. Sure, there are some ways to scale. You can start your own team, you can start your own group, and you can have other agents work for you, under you. You can have some agents as a buyer's agent, other agents as listing agents, other agents as rental agents, sure. But to get to that point is extremely difficult. And I think overall, there are other businesses that you can do, especially in the era of social media, especially in the era of the internet, that will allow you to scale a lot more effectively and efficiently. For example, if you have a drop shipping company, you can always take the money that you receive and just pump it into more Facebook ads. And the more Facebook ads you put out, the more sales you can make. And even though you're not putting in that much more time and that much more effort, you can still make a much greater return over the same period of time, or even over a shorter period of time, depending on how well your ads perform. Copywriting is also very similar. For anyone that's familiar with copywriting is effectively words that sell. It's easier to scale in copywriting than it is in real estate, in my opinion, especially because in real estate, to be a listing agent or to be a buyer's agent, it requires you to actually be there to a degree. To be a listing agent is a bit easier than a buyer's agent, and I'm not going to get too deep into the differences between them both. I'll do that in a separate video. But the overall point I want to make is that as an agent, you're to a degree always trading your time for the potential of money, not even actual money, because again, real estate agents are paid on commission. So there's a good chance that you might have a client, you might work a lot. It could be a few weeks, could be a few months, could even be a few years. I've seen agents who work for a single client for years and not get paid. So it's difficult to scale real estate. You need to be very skilled. And I think only a few people really accomplish this. I think other businesses, it's a lot simpler and a lot easier to scale. And again, you don't need to put that much capital into other businesses to really get things up and going, compared to real estate, in which you do need to put a lot of money in and a lot of time and a lot of knowledge to really get the ball going. And even then, it's still difficult to maintain it and keep it consistent. So yeah, scale is one thing to certainly consider when it comes to starting any business. But I think in real estate, it's very difficult to scale. Now, the third reason why I don't think real estate's a great industry to get into as a beginning entrepreneur, there are too many parties involved. And when I say this, I like to think that in a business, you want to have as few people involved as possible. The more hands you have in the pie, the more difficult it is for everyone to eat. Does that make sense? So now in real estate, you can have a home inspector, you have the agent, you have lawyers, you have appraisers, you have the bank. There's a lot of different parties in the transaction and a lot of different things that might affect the transaction. You might have a bad lender, and maybe your communication with the lender just isn't on point. Maybe the lender doesn't understand something, and that could lead to the end of the deal. You might have a bad attorney at settlement. That could lead to the end of the deal. You might have a bad home inspector or a home inspector that doesn't present something in a certain way. That could lead to the end of the deal. You might have a pest inspector. That could lead to the end of the deal. There's so many different parties involved in a real estate transaction. I think it becomes a bit difficult and a bit overwhelming for the average person to kind of get into it and truly make their way from start, which is getting the client, to finish, which is closing the client and getting the commission. So for that reason, that's sort of the third reason why I don't think for a beginning entrepreneur, getting into real estate is the best option. There's just too many different parties involved. It's difficult to coordinate between all of those different parties. And a lot of times you might find that different parties could actually hurt your business, which you don't want. I think the more control you have over your business, the better off you'll be in the long run. Fourth reason. This reason applies to every business, but I think in real estate, it applies a bit more. It's highly competitive. When I say highly competitive, what I mean is that everyone is a real estate agent. I'm sure you're watching this video. You probably know at least one real estate agent. You probably know several. Maybe they haven't presented themselves to you, but you probably know at least a few people that are real estate agents. And the thing about becoming a real estate agent is that you learn very quickly that everyone and their grandmother and their aunt and their uncle and their father and their brother and their sister and their mother, everyone is a real estate agent. It's true. Literally everyone you meet will be a real estate agent. And you're not looking for them. You're just finding them. Now, the reason why that's not a good thing is because I found that a lot of people don't rely too much on expertise. A lot of times people go more with who they just simply know. And the issue is if you are an agent and you get a client or you think you have a client and they know 5 other agents, it makes it that much more difficult for them to choose someone else over you. Now, of course, you can always go with the argument, well, if you're the best out of the 5 or 6, then you should have no issue, to which I would agree with you. However, realistically speaking, I think a good business doesn't have a ton of competition holding them back. I don't like the idea of having a business and also having several other businesses in very close proximity that do the exact same thing that I do. To me, it's just not, it's difficult, again, to just have a profitable, successful business down the line. Imagine you open up a restaurant and say when you first open up the restaurant, no one else is on the same street. Now, say 2 months later, 10 other restaurants open up right on the exact same street, and all 10 of those restaurants serve the exact same thing. You serve burgers, they also serve burgers. All of them, exactly the same. Now, how much more difficult do you think it would be for anyone to actually make any money? Probably very difficult, right? How do I determine if I'm going to go to this person versus this person versus this person? There's 10 whole restaurants on the exact same street that do the exact same thing. Which one do I eat at? That's the challenge you'll get with real estate. Now, again, when it comes down to marketing, when it comes down to branding, those things will help you stand out from the crowd. However, the more competition you have, the more difficult it is to really figure out what separates you from the pack. I think it's better to be a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond. Does that make sense at all? For that reason, I also think that real estate's not the best business to get into as a starting entrepreneur. The fifth reason why, I've found that a lot of deals are done through referrals when it comes to being an agent. And what I mean by this is kind of going back to the previous point. A lot of people will choose their agent not because they're looking for the most qualified, not because they're looking for the most well-rounded, not because they're looking for the person with the best communication skills or the best contract knowledge or the best personality or the best charisma. A lot of times people just choose their agent because it's the person in closest proximity. It's someone who's a relative. It's someone who's a very close friend. It's someone that just happened to be there at the right place at the right time. It's just someone that they heard about. It's someone who gives the best deal maybe. A lot of people don't choose their agent based on what can give them the best results. People choose their real estate agents very emotionally. So you find that only a small percentage of agents make all of the money. And I think the issue with that is that sometimes even with great marketing, sometimes even if you try to stand out, sometimes even if you know more than other agents, you still won't get the deal. You still won't get picked. And I think for that reason, I tend to think that residential real estate is a very emotional game for a lot of people. I think people go into it not thinking about how do I necessarily have the best deal financially. I think people go into it usually trying to start family. They're trying to create a certain lifestyle for themselves. They're trying to live out their dream life. So they're going into it more with their emotions at the top of what's important rather than logic. And that's completely fine. However, I think if you're approaching it from more of a logical perspective, from more of a business-minded perspective, it's a lot more difficult to be successful in that kind of industry. Like I said earlier, there are other industries where people go in and the deal makes a lot more sense. How much they're willing to spend makes more sense. If you're a business owner, you're probably going to go with, say, an agency that offers more clients at the least amount of money in the fastest amount of time. People don't go into buying a house usually in that same way. Maybe if you deal with investors, they do. But typically for the average residential client, they're looking at it more from an emotional perspective. If you're a brand new agent, if you're just getting into the game, that's very difficult to deal with. You're probably not used to that type of interaction. So for that reason as well, I don't think it's a great business model if you're just starting out in entrepreneurship. And then I have a sixth one, sort of a bonus. One of the final reasons why I don't think real estate as an agent is the best business model, it's a very long sales cycle. Me personally, I like the idea of making money relatively quickly. Take Amazon, for example. You go on Amazon's website, you see a product you like, you hit the buy button, and there you go. They took your money. It's a very short sales cycle. You see the product, you like the product. Amazon even offers a one-click buy option to decrease friction, is what they call it, to help you buy faster. And I think that's a fantastic business model. I think being able to get people to buy quickly is much better than dragging something out. And the reason why I say this, especially when it comes to real estate, is like I mentioned earlier somewhat, there's a lot of parties involved and there's a lot of different ways that a whole transaction can fall apart. You might be towards the end of the transaction and maybe your client decided to use their credit to buy furniture. Now they no longer qualify for their loan, which means the entire deal falls apart. I've had that happen. And like I mentioned earlier, real estate is not a salary type of career. It's only commission-based, which is fantastic because there's a lot of potential upside. There's effectively infinite ROI when you work on commission. However, because the sales cycle is so long, you can expect to go a very long time without any income. And I think the most detrimental thing about that, especially if you're a beginning entrepreneur, especially if you're just getting into entrepreneurship, if you're beginning as a real estate agent, it's best to have small wins to create momentum. And if you find yourself not making money quickly enough, if you find yourself not getting success fast enough, if you find yourself not getting an objective victory early on enough, it's almost disheartening to continue. It almost makes you upset. It almost makes you feel like you can't actually close any deals at all. And so for that reason, I also don't think it's a great business model for a lot of starting entrepreneurs. Just because I think if you were to get into business, the best thing you can do for yourself is get a win early on. The best thing you can do for yourself is to get a client quickly. Even if it's a client that breaks even if it's a client that costs you a little bit of money, it's still better to get a client, to know that you can get a client and to get some type of win than to have no win at all for a long period of time. So those are the sort of 5 main reasons why I don't think real estate is a great career to get into, especially if you're a beginning entrepreneur and especially if you're just getting into the game of real estate and if you aren't super familiar with it. So with that being said, I do think that real estate is a great thing to get into in general when it comes to getting passive income, when it comes to investing, and when it comes to being ultimately financially free. One of the things I learned while being an agent is that you don't actually need to be an agent to make money in real estate. You don't need to make real estate your career while pounding the pavements as a buyer's agent or as a listing agent or as a rental agent. You don't have to do those things at all. You can make money from real estate in other ways. You can be an investor, you can be a flipper, you can be a wholesaler, you can do a lot of things to still make money as a real estate agent. And for that reason, if you are interested in understanding more about how you can profit from real estate, if you click the link below, there's going to be a presentation that will explain all of the different ways you can make money in business, in crypto, etc. And it's going to explain why real estate is one of the best ways to make money, especially in the modern era. It's going to go through all the different ways you can make money in real estate. And if you watch the entire thing, it's a free presentation. And if you'd like to work with me so I can help you achieve financial freedom through real estate, click the link below. It's going to take you to a presentation that I created just for you. It's going to show you exactly how real estate can help you achieve financial freedom. There's a lot of different ways to achieve financial freedom through real estate. I'm going to explain all of those to you in that presentation. So if you're interested, click the link below. It's completely free, no money required, no credit card required. Click the link below. It'll take you to that. And then if you're interested, you can work with me and I can help you get yourself towards financial freedom with real estate. Hope to see you in the next video. Peace out.